Okay. Still no pointer? No.
These not there.
Because we already finished all the cranial nerves, so these are going to be fast because we are going to compare very quickly. And تعالى نبدأ بالسفرنجية first. It's a mixed cranial nerve. It has got somatic and visceral components, and it has got motor and sensory components like the facial and like the vagus. Now, at the beginning, let's compare the three. I already finished with the accessory. The accessory is mixed in a different way. It is motor, but it is motor to cranial components and sensory. You remember the cranial component of the accessory?
Yes, symbolize the short funnel and the absence of the pharynx and larynx.
The cranial component has got two components, sensory and motor. Motor to pharyngeal and laryngeal muscles from the nucleus ambiguous, we are going to mention it again now. And then it has got salivatory parasympathetic. Does it? No. No, you are not studying. Or you are not listening.
There's so much to study. There's so much to study. I'm still on the
Or you are not listening. Okay. The cranial component is only nucleus ambiguous for muscles of the pharynx and larynx. The spinal component, trapezius and sternum muscle. So, I'm mentioning it because it is from the nucleus ambiguous together with other cranial. When we started these three nerves, they have much in common functionally. They share the same certain nuclei in the medulla, and they all leave the cranium through the jugular foramen. These three. They share nuclei, have some nuclei in common, and then they leave the cranium through the same jugular foramen, and in fact they leave the brain in the same sulcus. Now, they are all mixed with variable components. Now, there are some general considerations so that we finish with that. Now, the central connections of these nerves contain the following. I already mentioned all of them. Sensory ganglia. Sensory ganglia. Ganglia means ganglia in the nerve. So the glossopharyngeal has got two glossopharyngeal ganglia, and the vagus has two vagal ganglia. In the neck, two. This is the first time we have two. Because in the trigeminal we have the trigeminal ganglion, and in the facial we have the facial ganglion, the geniculate. But in these two nerves, two for each, because they have somatic and visceral components with separate ganglia. Not like the geniculate of the facial. The geniculate of the facial serves both somatic and visceral. For the vagus and glossopharyngeal, they have a nucleus for the visceral and a nucleus for the somatic. Both glossopharyngeal. So, we have these superior and inferior ganglia. Also, they have nuclei in the visceral column, which is the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. We finished with that. All of them share the same nucleus solitarius. Okay? With the facial. In the special visceral, they share the nucleus. Which one? Nucleus ambiguous. In the visceral column, yes, the parasympathetic one, they have inferior salivatory and dorsal vagal. Now we have three motor nuclei. One in the facial, which is the superior salivatory. Then we have an inferior salivatory, and we have a vagal nucleus, separate vagal nucleus. All of these are in the parasympathetic column, which is the general visceral effort.
Doctor?
Yes?
Could you re-explain the point about the ganglia? Could you re-explain the point about the ganglia?
Each of the two nerves, the vagal and the vagus and the glossopharyngeal, each of them has two ganglia in the nerve itself. One of them is serving somatic sensation, and one of them is serving visceral sensation. Both of them have pseudouniform neuron. But the fibers go outside to collect information from visceral, and they go outside to collect information from somatic, let us say. Now, centrally speaking, they go to two separate nuclei, if you remember. What are these two nuclei which are shared?
Solitary.
The nucleus of the tractus solitarius for visceral surface. That's sensory.
Spinal.
The spinal trigeminal nucleus for general somatic sensation. هم not mentioned here لأنها general sensation. Okay, there they are. Let us start with, we finished with we finished with 6. What is 6? Superior salivatory nucleus of the facial. Alas, we're done with this, Now this is inferior salivatory nucleus, number 13, and then we have number 12, which is the dorsal motor nucleus. What is this 22, by the way? Intermediolateral cord of the spinal cord. And 25 is the sacral parasympathetic. This is sympathetic, this is parasympathetic, but it's spinal cord. Spinal. But let us focus on this. Alas, finish with this. Now, what is 14? This is the nucleus ambiguous, shared with the accessory. Now, what is this?
Solitary.
Nucleus of the tractus solitarius. All mixed cranial. Okay, then this طبعا هنا special sensation general and special visceral sensation وهنا the spinal cord. All mixed cranial. Trigeminal, facial, glossopharyngeal. Let us start with the first one, finish with it very quickly. The glossopharyngeal, 4 nuclei, and all of them are shared. Doesn't have any nucleus of its own. And all of them in the medulla shared with the accessory and the vagus. The nucleus ambiguous, it's the motor one, in the superior part of the medulla. Of course, you know it is served as the accessory. It has got an inferior salivatory nucleus, it's a parasympathetic one, which is adjacent to the rostral part of the nucleus ambiguous in the pons. And then the nucleus of the tractus solitarius, lateral to the dorsal nucleus of the vagus. So these 3 nuclei, the ambiguous, the parasympathetic, ambiguous, and then we have the tractus solitarius, which is sensory, and then we have the spinal trigeminal nucleus, general sensation. Okay, so this one. This one.
The next slide.
That you want this.
Yes. The last one.
أول حاجة تي اس معروف tractus solitarius. Okay. NA nucleus ambiguous, inferior salivatory nucleus, are superior and inferior ganglia, sensory ganglia, pseudounipolar neuron. Now, what are the branches? If I ask you, you will say, well, nerve to stylopharynx. Yes. A nerve to the tongue, a branch to the dorsal branch. What else? Stylopharynx, yes, it's a muscle, for tongue sensation. Other sensory areas in the inside the oral cavity. A nerve to the carotid, and it is called the carotid sinus. It's a carotid nerve, carotid sinus, because it's going to carotid body. So, branches, there is a tympanic branch, forms the tympanic plexus around, and which supplies the middle ear, mastoid antrum, and auditory tube, general sensation to the inside. From the plexus arises the lesser petrosal nerve. Lesser petrosal is a greater petrosal and the deep petrosal خلاص والنيرف الترجويد كانال ده تبع الفيس. لكن هنا في واحد اسمه lesser petrosal nerve. This carries preganglionic parasympathetic fiber and it goes to the otic ganglion. From the otic ganglion, both ganglionic fibers go to parotid gland. ده القصة. عندنا motor branch stylopharyngeal. عندنا carotid sinus nerve عرفناه مش كده supply sensory fibers to the carotid sinus, receptors or baroreceptors, and for the regulation of blood pressure. And there is branch معروف posterior third. It carries both taste and general sense. Lingual branch, general sensory, and taste fibers to the posterior third of the. These are the branches. Now, in the ear, we have quite a number around the tympanic plexus. منها بيطلع لنا ايش؟ The lesser superficial petrosal nerve to the otic ganglion to the parotid gland. عندنا الانفيريور salivatory. These are the two ganglia, the superior and inferior sensory ones. That general sensation. ومعاها بيطلعوا الفايبرز بتاعت الباروتيد. عندنا هنا special sensation بتاع اسمه what is the name of this? Carotid sinus nerve supplying of the sinus nerve, supplying baroreceptors and chemoreceptors. And then we have the lingual branch to the tongue, like it supplies also the tonsils and the soft palate. Glosopharyngeal done vagus. Very similar, but different areas also. But remember I told you why the ambiguous is called the ambiguous and the vagus is called the vagus? Because this is the only nerve that goes beyond the head. And it is all over the place. Up to where? Up to where? Huh? Where about it? You remember the colon? I've got a seta, a central colon, transverse colon, the descending colon, and so on. Do you remember the splenic flexure? Up to the splenic. Descending sigmoid, etc., come from the sacral plexus. Parasympathetic fibers from the sacral. It's called sacral or pelvic splanchnic nerve. What is the meaning of splanchnic? Splanchnic. Yes, remember the lesser splanchnic, the lesser splanchnic, and the lowest? You did it in the end, so you know about it. What is the meaning of splanchnic? Yes. Yes. Listen. But we have sympathetic splanchnic, the one you mentioned, and parasympathetic splanchnic, the sacral or pelvic. They come from the spinal cord in the sacral region. And okay, the vagus. We had 4 nuclei in the glossopharyngeal. Yeah. Now listen to the vagus. it already shares a number of them with the glossopharyngeal. What are they? Very quickly, very quickly. Now, ambiguous is accessory and glossopharyngeal. Okay? Then we have superior cerebellum, inferior cerebellum. Let us see. And then the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. And then the spinal cord. We already finished with a number of them. هنضيف لهم حاجة بسيطة كده بيكون the vagus nerve, the nuclei of the vagus nerve. Inferior, it has got ganglia, similar برضو. Skin sensation here, and then we have visceral sensation. Okay? 4 central nuclei عندنا 4 لكن عندنا replacement بتاع واحدة بس. The nucleus ambiguous motor to the constrictors of the pharynx and intrinsics of the lung. فيبقى هنا مع الاكسسوري glossopharyngeal ambiguous vagus. وعندنا nucleus of the tractus solitarius. وعندنا spinal trigeminal. دي الأربعة. كان عندنا هناك للباروتيد gland. Which nucleus for the parotid gland? Inferior salivatory nucleus. So the inferior salivatory nucleus is 4 glands supplied by the glossopharyngeal. We need a replacement for this inferior salivatory. There is a vagal motor nucleus. And if I ask you about the nuclei of the glossopharyngeal, you tell me 4. When you tell me about the vagus, you take 3 of them, remove the inferior salivatory, replace it with the motor vagal, done. The dorsal nucleus of the vagus, which is parasympathetic. To the muscles of the bronchi, the heart, the GIT, secretory glands, etc. But this is why it is vagus, it is all over the place. Now, the nucleus of the tractus solitarius is visceral sensation. To taste from the posterior tongue, epiglottis through the inferior sensory ganglion, عندنا baroreceptors and chemoreceptors to the aortic body and sinus. هناك كان glossopharyngeal to the carotid body and sinus, while the vagus to the aortic body and sinus. The spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, general sensation through the superior sensory ganglia. And these are the 2 ganglia. And this is the communicating branch between the 2 nerves. nuclei خلاص هم ديل عرفناهم. 3 مشتركات, and this is the 4th one. Finally, 4 nuclei, 1 different from the glossopharyngeal, and this is vagus, and this is a distribution all over the place, bronchi, lung, heart, viscera up to the colic flexures. Thank you very much.